This goat is a pretty cool car, but it's missing one key important factor, and we're gonna fix that, so check this out. Hey Miner, what do you have for tools in your toolbox? Let's check it out. Whoa, what is that?
Oh, that's just a wave track differential.
You just got a wave track differential? Dude, we should put that into something. You thinking what I'm thinking?
I think we're gonna be putting this in there.
All right, let's do it. We're gonna be installing a differential in this GTO, limited slip, wave track, and then we're gonna test it, of course, to make sure it works. All right, Miner, what are you doing under here?
Hey, what's going on? So, yeah, we're gonna send it. We're just gonna throw it in there. Probably gonna eye it together, use our thumbs, measure.
Throw caution to the wind. All right, so the diff out, and Pontiac, in all its wisdom, put these differential bolts on top of the subframe.
Actually, Holden did it, not Pontiac, right?
Holden?
This is a Holden.
Don't blame Holden. Holden didn't do nothing. This is Pontiac. So all we can get a wrench in there. We don't have a lot of room. We already broke these free, but we're gonna have to lower this differential while loosening those bolts. The alternative is to take the whole subframe out with it, but that's just doing it right, and we're not about that life. Oh wow, look at that.
I've already flew 3 times too.
So it looks like
You can see the pieces coming out.
it makes sense to replace this diff either way. But that's probably means we're gonna have to do our pinion bearing as well. That looks flaky as hell. Well, you know what they say, Miner.
I forgot.
All right, so we got the diff on a stand so we can work on it nice and comfortable. Miner is gonna go ahead and take that cover off. Looks like somebody's already been in here. They did not put all of the bolts back into the diff cover, because why do you need bolts when you got RTV? And let's see what happens. We'll keep you guys in the loop. All right, so we're running into a little bit of an issue, a little snag. Unfortunately, Pontiac or Holden does not have a service procedure for overhauling this differential. What that means for us is that we don't have any specifications, we don't have any procedures. I've done a bunch of differential rebuilds, and most of the differentials I've done, with the exception of a few, have had bearing caps on them. Let me show you what that is. So normally these side bearings are held in with caps. In this case, there is no cap here. What we have here is, I think, let me show you on this side, we have this plate here that probably screws in to tighten up against this bearing. And you have to have a certain amount of torque to put a preload on these side bearings. And you also need to set your backlash. Basically, by tightening this one and loosening this one, you're gonna move this differential this way. And then if you loosen this one, tighten this one, you're gonna move it this way. So that's how you set your backlash, but then you also have to have your preload. So I wasn't expecting to see no bearing caps, which would just use shims in order to achieve that side-to-side motion, and also the preload, which would be basically the squeezing of the bearings by those shims. So because we have this different design, it's going to make things a little bit more interesting with no service procedure. Now, luckily for Miner here, who I'm helping rebuild this diff, I've done diffs with this similar setup. Jeep Liberties use this particular setup, so I've done those, and I think we'll fudge through it and have to figure out. The good news is this diff has seen way better days. There is all sorts of metal flake in there. So Miner decided to rebuild this at the right time. We'll let that puppy drain. So what I did here is I indexed our bearing cap, retaining cap, to the housing. I don't think it's gonna really be super helpful because we're still gonna need to make adjustments, but I think it will give me some sort of a reference point, see where we can start with, and then go from there. So the next step is gonna be to figure out a tool, and I'm gonna assume this is a regular right-hand thread, hopefully. We're gonna find a tool that we can jerry-rig to take this cap off, and we'll unscrew this and see what happens. Hopefully it unscrews. Hopefully it's not a press fit for some reason, but I'm pretty confident that that's gonna unscrew. Let's find out. So what I did is I took my exhaust pipe spreader, I took the rollers off of it and put some bolts through it, and we're gonna use that with this massive pipe wrench on it, like that. I'm gonna use that to turn it. I think that's gonna work. There's not really a lot of options. We don't have the special tool. We're gonna use little torches to heat up the perimeter of that so that we can, in case there's any thread lock on it.
A few moments later.
All right, so Miner is making a tool that will fit into here, allow us to unscrew that. At least that's the plan. Whether or not we'll be able to actually unscrew it remains to be seen, but we're gonna make a tool because where there's a will, there's a way, and it's starting to look like a special tool. Just like me. All right, so we made a special tool that goes into those splines, or whatever you want to call them. And after using a big pipe on this to try to get it off, it didn't want to come off. And this side goes off by hand. So before you get, let's do the other side. Tap that out. What a good fit. You can buy these at LaronAutomotive.com for $68. Mine will custom make one for you. This is, tap it all the way in. Tap it on the center.
Looking for safety glasses.
Well, we're,
Ready? 1, 2.
Minor pulling.
this might be a job for a torque multiplier. What do you think? Oh, it's about to come out of the lift. We welded the socket on it, so now this is an official tool. It's not just a wannabe tool. This is
DIY.
this is an official tool that we can be proud of. All right, let's see if it works. All right, so we welded on a socket to the hub tool that we made, and now we got a torque multiplier on it.
Here I apply roughly 900 foot-pounds of torque to break it loose, and it still doesn't want to come off.
I got some.
With this 3-foot breaker bar, I'm able to apply around 1,400 foot-pounds. And finally,
Oh, it just broke free.
Did it really?
So it's definitely seized on there, and that's why it won't turn, because I think it's fused to the housing. Here's what I need you to do. Knock that piece in with a hammer. I think that, okay. Can you put a little bit of pressure on there, so here, so that it doesn't come off, but just, let me get my ratchet now. Oh, right here. Wow, torque multiplier for the win!
There it goes. There it goes.
I thought it was just spinning without coming out.
It's threading out. You can
Yeah.
probably thread it out by hand now.
So we're good. Let's leave that right there for a sec. Let's show the people what we got. So this piece, we finally, looks like there's all sorts of crud and stuff in the threads. That's probably what was screwing us up. But our specialty tool here that we made with the infamous torque multiplier.
See how it goes into the grooves right there. Worked perfect.
Let's keep building her. All right, so we have the differential gutted. We have all of our bearings and everything out of the case. The only thing we got left in the case is a bearing race, so we're just gonna tap those out. There we go. That one is out. A Koyo. I like it. And let's do the same for the other side. Oh shit. All right, so this is the old differential. We took the ring gear off, but let's take this off. Let's separate it into two, just to show you what is inside the factory diff. So it's got this cone style piece, right? That's on this side. It has a ring gear, or one of the spider gears. Those go on here. And in here you have a bunch of springs that push against this spider gear, and then that spider gear wedges into this cone-shaped housing that is, and it looks, it's all worn out. If you look, pull that out, that is all that's worn out. You can see there's metal. I don't know if that's supposed to have friction material on it. I would imagine there should be, but it almost looks like metal on metal, which is wild if that's how they do it, that there isn't any friction material. But we're gonna replace this with wave track, and should be way better. Open her up. Oh, look at these. We got all clean parts now that we'll be able to put back together. So let's get that up there and we'll start assembling.
But before I ever did that, the first time I ever did one, I felt like it was too much fucking work, so you know what I did? You had to get to the slide pin, and the teeth were in the way. I cut some of the teeth to get the slide pin out.
Listen to this guy. All right, so we torqued the ring gear on. All right, so we're installing the big pinion race. I'm just gonna tap that puppy in. Seems to be going nicely. There you go. Okay. 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 Let's lube it up a little bit.
This is the side with the crush washer and everything. So why would you wouldn't have it?
Okay, let's.
Oh yeah, is that gonna be the same thing?
Yeah. Hold this so it doesn't bounce. Are we going straight?
Yeah, we're good. Still good.
I heard a pop. Are we good?
It went down.
Is that in? Let's flip it. All right, we're seated.
That's all the way down.
All right, guys, so we're all the way in with the bearing races. All right, guys, so we're setting the torque to rotate on this pinion. And one issue that we have is that there is no spec on this. At least the spec is 2 to 4 inch-pounds, which from my experience is way too low. When I did measure it, it was at 4 inch-pounds on the old bearing, but that was worn out. So I'm gonna set this to 15 inch-pounds, which is on the lower side of what I would expect this spec to be. I think that's pretty standard for most of these bearings. So we'll set that. What we use is a torque multiplier just to make things a little bit easier on us, so we're not fighting it. And we'll be checking it periodically. Right, so we're gonna set this to 15 inch-pounds. This is probably the most painful part of this whole process. Because we got to check it periodically. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing that. There we go, starting to get tighter. So we're starting to get tighter. We're looking for 15 inch-pounds. This doesn't feel like 15 inch-pounds, so let's keep going until we get there.
You measure the...
I do it with my fingers.
No, but you're supposed to do it, that's the rotational, right?
So we're gonna go a little at a time, and we're gonna go until it gets tight. So this is not, we can measure it just to see where we're at currently. Oh, good thing we stopped.
Is it 15? Yeah.
We're right around 12 inch-pounds. We're at 12 inch-pounds. With new bearings, you want to go on the higher side. It's going to wear in. Let's just go a tad more. We'll turn the slightest amount. Once we turn it, if we go too far, there's no going back. So the slightest amount. Okay. Go ahead and rotate that. So we're
Just before the 20, but that's still,
we're right at the 15.
we're over 15. Because the middle would be 15.
We're about 15, 16 inch-pounds, which I don't know, I'm pretty happy with. We'll just leave it at that. Guys, so we have the differential pretty much ready to go into our housing. Our housing is all prepped. We have the pinion set to 15 inch-pounds torque to rotate. Everything's cleaned up. And we have our differential bearings all lubed up, and seals are installed into the side bearing holders. The bearings are installed. There's needle bearings for the axle shaft. Everything is ready to go in. That's torqued. So next step is to get this side of that. All right, let's do it. So we have the differential side of our housing, and what our plan now is we need to tighten these bearing holders, and as that tightens that up, you can see that over here pretty well. As that comes in this way, that's going to squeeze our differential, and that'll give us the slight preload that we need on those side bearings. But what's more importantly is we need to set where our pinion sits in relations, or sorry, where our ring gear sits in relations to the pinion gear that's at the bottom there. So that pinion gear, where it clashes to the ring gear, we're going to need to set a backlash. So the closer we get this over, the less backlash there's going to be, and we want to have about 6 thousandths of backlash back and forth like this between the gears as they clash together. So we're going to play around with this, getting it left and right in order to get that backlash correctly by screwing this in, this out, and so forth until it's exactly where we need it. Again, there is no specs for this differential, which is making this a little bit challenging because I don't know how much preload do we need on those side bearings, and there's no specification. Some people online say that there is no spec, and that spec is basically to make sure your backlash is correct. There's nothing to keep these from unscrewing. These are pretty loose in there. So if I was to just leave them not tight, I'm a little concerned about them backing out. What I prefer to do is put a little bit of preload on there. I looked up differential on a Liberty, which uses similar setup. I think some of the Fords differential also use that setup, and those call for 75 foot-pounds of preload on them, but they also use bearing caps that tighten down onto the bearings instead of the bearings being encased in this bearing housing. So those caps put a certain amount of load on the bearing. So as you're tightening the adjuster, the bearing is being retained with some pressure with this bearing cap. Whereas in this case, our whole assembly is turning, so there's no resistance in this bearing moving back and forth. So I don't know, I'm kind of thinking maybe 20 to 30 foot-pounds. We're gonna set it up and definitely mark it and keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't back out over time. Maybe put torque marks on there. It's a little bit sketch, but I don't know what else to do here without any specifications. So see what happens. All right, so we have exactly 6 thousandths of backlash set. Let's show you guys. 0, 6 thousandths. So the backlash is set. I still don't know what to do with the preload on these side bearings. The only place I found that mentions anything about that talks about just making sure your backlash is correct and don't worry about those side bearing caps. I don't know. I probably have about 30, 40 foot-pounds on them at the moment, maybe a little bit more. I'm gonna rotate the whole assembly and see how difficult it is to rotate, get a feel for it, and go from there. So I went ahead and rotated this ring gear and marked 4 places and checked the backlash on all 4 places. And I have exactly 6 thousandths of backlash all the way around. That's telling me that it's spinning nice and true. There's no out of round. Everything's sitting normally, so pretty happy there. I'm just gonna check the torque on these side bearing caps and go from there. All right, after much deliberation, here's what we ended up with. We went up a little bit on our torque to rotate for the pinion. We actually set it to about 25 inch-pounds, which is more in line with what I'm used to setting these. I was finding a lot that are asking for 15, but researching a little bit more, found somebody saying somewhere between 25 and 30, which is generally what I would be at setting up a differential. For the side bearings, what we found is, again, no torque specs, but we found people basically preloading these until our total torque to rotate is about 40 to 60 inch-pounds. We're about 45 inch-pounds right now. We're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna do 45 inch-pounds on the torque to rotate with the side bearing preloads, and we're at 25 inch-pounds on the pinion gear. So that's where we're gonna leave them. We are seeing some options out there to have locking tabs for these side bearing cases. Whether or not we're gonna put them in, I don't know. We don't have them. They weren't on the car. I think they might be an aftermarket add-on. I'm not sure. Pretty easy to make, just a little metal tab. So one way or another, I don't think it's a big deal. But let's do the ring gear pattern and see if we're on point. All right, so we have a contact pattern here that I think we can live with. It's centered-ish on both sides. Pretty happy with it. It's not perfect, but I think it's gonna do for what we're trying to use. Set of gears, so the pattern could be a little bit harder to attain to be perfect. This pattern looks, I think, pretty good in my opinion. So we put the fluid in, our axle stub shafts are in, and the last part is to put this diff cover on. Once that goes on, we are good to go. And the differential's in. The only thing we got left is to make sure it works. That should be pretty straightforward. Not a big deal to try and make sure our limited slip slips limitedly. Does the diff work? Yes!